Welcome to Corporate Competitor, presented by Forbes Books, the podcast where the world's greatest executives share how the lessons they learned playing sports shaped their leadership. After more than 200 episodes with CEOs and senior leaders like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy, Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, and former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, one thing is clear. Whether they were inducted into their sports hall of fame or hung up their cleats after high school, sports has been a powerful, shared foundation for success. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and each week, in partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, we bring you genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with influential leaders so you can apply their insights to elevate your leadership. With me for today's episode is ESPN Chairman Jimmy Pitaro. Jimmy grew up in a family passionate about sports, especially the Yankees, sparking a love that stayed with him through his career. He went on to play football at Cornell University, and although his athletic career was cut short by injury, Jimmy turned that setback into a powerful learning experience, embracing a philosophy of win or learn, which he carries with him today. Before joining ESPN, Jimmy was instrumental in transforming Yahoo Sports into a leading digital destination. His work caught the attention of Bob Iger, the CEO at Disney. The rest is history. For notes from today's session, including my favorite quotes and reflection questions to help you apply Jimmy's insights, download our free PDF at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes.
Discuss, debate, decide, align. What I miss about sports, the huddle, I am constantly striving to replicate that feeling. I want to make sure that people are heard. I want to make sure our employees have the ability to chime in and participate. Yeah, we talk sensitive topics, debate them. If we can't decide as a team, that's my job. And then the expectation is that you align, get with the program, discuss, debate, decide, align.
Jimmy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Don.
You know, I had the opportunity to meet you at a board meeting of an organization that inspires both your passion and mine, the Jimmy V Foundation. Support for the V Foundation has been a cornerstone of ESPN's culture for years. And as somebody deep inside the organization, what does it represent culturally at ESPN?
I knew before I got here how important it was to the employees of ESPN, but you really have to be here to feel it. Work day in, day out at ESPN to truly understand how much a part of the culture the V Foundation is. I inherited this privilege of making the V a priority at ESPN. It long predates me, Don, as you know. Giving back, it's a big part of our culture. We do have a variety of priorities like children's hospitals and veterans. Cancer is also one of them. We take so much pride in how much money we've raised around cancer research. A big chunk of it comes from the Vital Gala. I attend that every year, and this year we raised close to $25 million in 1 year at one event.
One evening.
And if you walk the halls of Bristol or Los Angeles or New York City or Charlotte or any of our offices and ask employees about the V, my guess is you'll see them immediately light up. I can go on and on, Don, but I think you get a sense of how much pride we take in being partnered with the V.
Well, the V couldn't be what it is without the relationship. What ESPN does is so meaningful. But as I was preparing for today, there was this theme that stood out to me. You always communicated your career goals with your bosses, and you asked them to help you with the steps needed to get there so that when opportunities arose, you were top of mind. That's a bold move.
Well, out of law school, I was a litigator in New York City, and I didn't like it. I thought I would like it because it was the closest to competitive sports if I wasn't going to be a professional athlete, that is. And I was very clear with the firm that it wasn't for me. So after about 6 months, they were able to find a role for me in in the transactional department. That was much better, much more my speed. I liked doing deals. I liked the sense of accomplishment. And then my wife's career actually took us to the West Coast. So I resigned and moved to Los Angeles, took a job working in-house for a public music internet company.
Launch.com?
Exactly, launch.com.
Yeah.
We sold that company to Yahoo. I stayed on board to do legal and business affairs and some business development. But at the same time, yes, I did communicate to those above me. I had other aspirations. I made it clear to the folks above me that I was a passionate sports fan. Because I had communicated my interests and because I think I'd done a relatively good job getting deals done in my business affairs role, when the person who was leading Yahoo Sports left the company, they asked me to take on the job. Huge break for me.
Right.
I did that for several years. And Bob Iger,
Yeah.
I was competing against ESPN. So I think I got his attention that way. And in 2010, in my very first meeting with Bob Iger, we talked about leading Disney Interactive, but we also talked about ESPN. I made it clear to him that I was a huge sports fan and that I would love to someday work at ESPN. And then year after year, when I would get my annual review, I'd sit in Bob's office. He, of course, talked to me about my compensation and talked to me about my performance for that year. But then we'd always finish off with, okay, where do we want to go next? Where do you want to go next? Of course, then I would talk about ESPN and sports. And fast forward to 2017, the gentleman who was leading ESPN resigns. Because I had been clear with Bob over the years on my interest, he called me and said, okay, I assume you're interested in this job.
After 7 years of telling me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the same time, Don, he did not just hand me the job. I interviewed probably at least 15 times.
Wow.
A big chunk of them were actually interviews with him, but then board members and other people in corporate, and ultimately they offered me the job. But I'm not sure that I would have even been a candidate or on their radar if I hadn't repeatedly communicated to them that I was interested.
Right. So can you coach me a little bit? If you could take a lesson from what you did that you might coach somebody else to be thinking about on their ascension or their hopes for ascension.
I think ambition is a good thing. I want folks at ESPN to be ambitious. I want them to be focused on taking on more, contributing more to the company. At the same time, Don, I think it's a delicate balance. You don't want to be perceived as overly ambitious.
Right.
And you don't want every conversation with your manager to finish with, hey, okay, how can I advance my career? I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but I used my annual review to have that conversation. And fortunately, and to Bob's credit, I didn't ever even have to raise it. Bob would ask me, all right, so this is a sprawling enterprise, the Walt Disney Company. There are so many things to do. If he hadn't, I probably still would have raised it.
Right.
But again, you don't want to be the person who is using every single opportunity to talk about career advancement. That, as a manager, would rub me the wrong way.
Be off-putting.
Exactly. You want your people, your direct reports, your teammates focused on the task at hand. And you want the conversations to be mostly about delivering, execution, substantive, and advancing the business. But there's room. And I'm not saying that you need to wait and only have this conversation once a year. In fact, we very much prioritize our leaders having mid-year conversations or even quarterly conversations. And that to me feels right. More than that, if you're the one raising it, that feels a bit excessive. And look, work hard and treat people well.
There you go.
Do those two things. My guess is that your manager is going to proactively say to you, okay, where do you want to go next?
Right.
Things have a way of taking care of themselves when you
do those two things.
Exactly.
I love it. You know, ESPN has a long tradition of promoting leaders from within the greater organization. The last 5 presidents.
Yep.
How does ESPN focus on identifying and nurturing that future talent?
We do take succession planning very seriously at Disney and at ESPN. I meet regularly with our HR leader to identify top performers, not just my direct reports, by the way, top performers across ESPN and across levels.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this morning, I was having a conversation with our HR group around top performers. My strategy has always been to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am. I've been very good at that. We also have people who have really good experience and folks who are not reluctant or shy about speaking up on areas that are not within their immediate control or purview. We meet every single week as a leadership team, Don. It is a mandatory meeting unless you're on vacation. My direct reports and I discuss topics that are connected to our AOP, annual operating plan. We discuss our 5-year plan. We discuss the 10-year plan, and we challenge each other. My direct reports know that I want to be challenged. We want ESPN executives. We don't want ESPN marketing executives or ESPN sales or strategy or programming or content executives. The folks around the ESPN leadership table need to be ESPN leaders, thinking about every aspect of our business. So our head of content should be chiming in on sales. Our head of sales should be chiming in on marketing. You see that. You see us regularly challenging each other, always in the right way. I mean, I've been at this table for 7 years. There have been exactly 0 times where there's been any tension or conflict. There's a ton of debate and a ton of pushing back, but we have a leadership team that prides itself on doing things the right way. It is the highlight of my week, getting together with the ESPN leadership team.
Wow. You said something there, talking about the 5-year plan, 10-year plan. How do you build a 5-year or a 10-year plan in a world in which, especially yours, you don't know what next week is going to look like?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. We do a 5-year plan every single year. Others do a 1-year plan every 5 years. So,
right.
Look, just because we do a 5-year plan doesn't mean that it's locked in for those 5 years. We update the 5-year plan
every year.
Yes. The point that you're making, Don, is that things are changing so rapidly.
So crazy.
More than they probably ever have over a course of 1 year. We know that. At the same time, there's a lot of value in having a 5-year plan because it helps you determine priorities and provide clarity to your employees. Don, if you ask any ESPN employee what our priorities are, they will tell you. I'd be shocked if there was a single employee at ESPN out of the many thousands that we have who would not be able to tell you what our 4 business priorities are. And we take a lot of pride in that.
Okay. So what are the 4 business priorities? We're going to start with you.
Let's start with direct to consumer. No secret there.
Right.
The next is audience expansion. We want to do a better job at attracting a younger audience, more casual fans, more women to our networks and digital properties. The next is quality storytelling and programming.
Man.
When I think about ESPN as a kid, or the years that I spent competing against ESPN, or the years that I spent at the Disney leadership table following ESPN, first thing that comes to mind is quality. As a result of that, ESPN has always been such a good fit at the Walt Disney Company because the constant focus is on quality storytelling. When I think about this place, I think about substance, heart, and humor. And when ESPN is able to combine those 3 elements, we are at our best, whether that's SportsCenter, 30 for 30, or College Game Day, or E60, that is ESPN at its best. And then the last is innovation. We have a long history of being first. We're in our 45th year here, and there have been so many cases where we have taken a risk and we've been first in a specific area. Many times it's worked out. For example, covering sports 24/7.
Even if it was rugby.
Even if it was rugby, right.
Right.
But other times, as you know, it has not worked out, and that's okay. We're okay with that. We're going to learn from it. Sounds somewhat cliche, but it really is true. We are okay with failure. If you're not okay with failure, then you better get out of this business. With how quickly it's changing, You have to be nimble. You have to be moving. You have to try new things. And by definition, they're not always going to work.
I love it. So growing up in a sports loving family, memories of watching the Yankees over dinner, playing basketball, baseball, football. I love the pictures of you from your high school yearbook.
Yeah.
What's one athletic memory from the Pitaro story?
There's so many, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sports have been my life since I was a little boy. Football, baseball, basketball, track, all of it. High school, college. I was never home. I was always at practice. My senior year of high school, there were a ton of expectations. We had a really good senior group. We all grew up together. Junior year, we lost like 3 games by less than 7 points, and it was just a heartbreaker of a season. Senior year was our time. This was it. We came out of the gates really strong. After 4 games, we were undefeated, ranked in the state, and we had our first Friday night game. I grew up in Westchester County, New York.
Right.
There weren't very many Friday night lights.
Really?
We played Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
And we're playing a school called Pelham at their stadium, which was a large stadium. They made it their homecoming game, and it was packed, and we were undefeated. We were the team to beat. And I had a tragedy in my family the week before. My aunt, who I was very close with, died of cancer, and so I was in Massachusetts for the week, and I missed the whole week of practice.
Mm.
I got home Friday afternoon for the Friday night game, and I didn't really have the plan, and I got beat.
Mm.
It was a halfback option. It was my guy who got past me. It was like a 30-yard bomb, and then they went on to score. We lost the game 13-6.
Mm.
And it was on local television. Everyone I knew saw the game, and it was heartbreaking. Lots of tears in the locker room afterwards, but failure.
Yes.
I've had so many coaches in my life across sports. One of my coaches, Coach Jim Sammarco, fantastic coach at Edgemont High School, who said, you win or you learn.
Mm.
When you're 17 years old, those words, they're hard to hear. But now in hindsight, we learned a ton by losing that game. And we really did bond even more so as a team, as a unit, because of that loss. And then we went on and had some dominating wins against some teams that were maybe even better than we were. But an experience like that, it was heartbreaking. I'm still not over it.
No, I would, given the level of detail you have, something tells me you're still not.
Yeah. But that which does not break you, right?
Right.
Makes you stronger.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the things that has always stood out to me in my career working with really great athletes, as you have, is how many of them do have a chip on their shoulder. Tom Brady can give you the statistics of every player drafted ahead of him.
Well, you know that saying, losing feels worse than winning feels good.
Yeah.
Jeter remembers 2001 and 2004 as much as he remembers the many World Series victories that he had.
Yeah, it's true. Funny because there are some people go, well, gosh, Jimmy Pitaro, are you really? I actually think it's good for people to have something that brings them back. I mean, you're chairman of ESPN. How cool is that?
Yep.
But there's still something that reminds you it wasn't always good. There's something in that for successful people.
Look, I just gave you one game in high school.
Mm-hmm.
That was my entire career in college, but for a different reason. I was plagued by injuries.
Yeah.
Plagued. From the second I showed up on campus in Ithaca in 1987, I was injured, and it never got better for me, but I learned a ton from that whole experience as well.
So was there a coach or a teammate somewhere along that journey, high school, college, who left a lasting impact?
Yeah, a gentleman named Doug Tuttle, my high school basketball coach. I would have run through a wall for him, walked through fire for him. I wanted to win for him. I remember my junior year in high school, I was a 2-guard, and we performed far better than anyone expected. We literally did not have anyone on the starting 5 that was taller than 6'2", literally. Yet we won a lot of games and we advanced through the first round of the playoffs. We had a very key victory the second round. I felt good primarily for him. Just wanted to win for him. He was a human being, supportive when things went really well. When things went really poorly, He wasn't a yeller and a screamer. He was there for you. He would take us out after games. We would go get pizza together all the time. He was in his mid-30s, so he would practice with us, and he was really good, too. He was a really good player. He was one of us.
Right.
But again, he was just a good guy that you wanted to be around. Now, I've had other coaches that were completely the opposite, really, really tough. And I learned a lot through that way of coaching. My high school football coach was really, really tough. Brilliant, but we didn't socialize. We didn't go out after. In fact, there was always a little bit of a fear factor going on. But I wanted to win and perform just as much for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I used to really, really fear Monday film because you can't hide. But I've seen both ways of coaching, both sides.
And what did Jimmy Pitaro become?
I don't know. That's a hard one. I try. Okay. No one wants to work for a pessimist. So I try to bring positivity. I try to be a realist, but I try to be optimistic at the same time. Clarity is an important part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
That starts with me. So I'm still learning every single day. I'm trying to grow. I've been in this job for 7 years, and I still feel like I'm learning. I'm understanding more about ESPN. I'm understanding more about the industry, and I'm pretty optimistic about our future here, primarily because I've surrounded myself with such great people.
I actually heard you on a previous podcast to prep for today, and you were talking about the importance of being on a team sport. In fact, you even said you learned more from being in a team sport than you might have in formal education. I'm sure the Cornell people are really happy with that. But can you share something that you learned from that team environment that you think shaped who you are today?
The huddle.
When
people ask me what I miss about sports, the huddle, looking around and seeing that group of guys my senior year in high school, we went through so much together. That bonds you. It makes you feel part of something, makes you feel special. So I am constantly striving to replicate that feeling in my work life, constantly. My weekly staff meetings, that's the closest I can get to the huddle. I say discuss, debate, decide, align. I want to make sure that people are heard, that our leaders have the forum to speak up. It's not just leaders. I want to make sure our employees have the ability to chime in and participate. And yeah, we talk about very sensitive topics. We debate them. My goal is to decide as a team. And oftentimes we are able to do that. If we can't decide as a team, Bob and the board pay me to decide. That's my job. But more often than not, we are able to decide as a leadership team. And then the expectation is that you align.
Right.
Probably the most important component. Once the decision's been made, get with the program. The time for debating or challenging is over. If not, the whole thing comes crumbling down. And I will tell you without any hesitation that I have had situations in my career where a direct report would still challenge decisions after they were made. It just doesn't work that way. Fortunately, today, I'm surrounded by people. This morning, I was on a call with our head of programming and rights, and she literally said, discuss, debate, decide, align. Not talking about our staff meetings, but in another context.
She gave you the 4 words and said, okay, let's go through it.
Music to my ears.
That's it. And you're right. You can't have a huddle end and have 10 players say, okay, this is the play we're going to run. And the 11th says, nah, I didn't really want to run that play. You know what? I'm going to go out and do something different. In a sporting environment, we all understand alignment is key.
Yeah. So offensive linemen.
Yes.
Offensive linemen typically get 0 credit.
Right.
There's no ego.
Till they jump offside.
Yeah. But their roles are so important. They're the most underrated position in sports. Our head of PR and comms, Chris LaPlaca, was here for decades. He used to say, act like an offensive lineman.
Wow.
If you look at ESPN, we are surrounded by offensive linemen, people who check their egos at the door and are focused on what's best for the team. And I know this sounds somewhat cliche, and no place is perfect, but I really have experienced that at ESPN. Personally, Don, I don't like it when people use the word my.
Mm-hmm.
My team, my budget, my P&L, my deal just has always rubbed me the wrong way. You don't hear a lot of that, if any of it, at ESPN.
It's very cultural.
Exactly. So act like an offensive lineman.
I'm riveted by this discuss, debate, decide, align, and the fact that it's so integral to your leadership style that a member of your team would actually say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, I can give you dozens of examples. First thing that comes to mind is make ESPN available direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
There are many arguments to be made against that.
By the cable companies?
Yeah, this could be disruptive to the traditional ecosystem.
Right.
Now, we've done more than just about anyone to protect that ecosystem.
Correct.
It has been very good to us, and it will be a priority of ours going forward. This is parallel paths. At the same time, we see declines month after month, year after year, and you get to a certain point where you have to disrupt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are right now. And there were many, many heated discussions around this topic, weighing the pros and cons of taking ESPN over the top. Fortunately, we ultimately aligned as a leadership team. Now, there are still other conversations that are being had, price point, what we're going to call ESPN direct to consumer, the exact date, things like that. But we are going to be making ESPN available direct to the consumer in 25.
That's big, and I'm excited. But you get to a certain point where you have to disrupt yourself. That's a hard one.
Absolutely. I mean, the safe thing to do would be to continue to invest solely in the traditional ecosystem, but it would also be short-sighted. So we are not deprioritizing that traditional world. We're adding a new priority to make our networks available on an a la carte basis. And there are many benefits, Don. The focus will be on people on the sidelines. There are 50 or 60 million households right now that are not subscribing to the traditional ecosystem.
Right.
There's an opportunity there, but it's called direct to consumer for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Get them in and we will have access to the data. There's no middle person there. We will know what our sports fans, what our customers are consuming. And as a result, we will have the ability to present to them a more compelling digital sports experience, a more personalized experience, a more interactive sports experience. And that's exciting to me.
It's going to be awesome. So I've been working for the last 7 years on a book on the science of momentum. I'm fascinated by momentum. And as a sports guy, I'm going to bet you are too.
Absolutely. I see it all the time in corporate America also.
Right.
Look, it wasn't too long ago where people were talking about studio programming being dead.
Mm-hmm.
With advancements made in technology and the internet and YouTube and social platforms, everything is one click away. Short form programming will rule the day. No one's going to watch 9-inning baseball games or 4 quarters of a basketball game or a football game.
Or a 60-minute documentary.
Or a 60-minute documentary. Everything is changing. It wasn't too long ago that was the prevailing thinking. Look at what's happening. Our ratings are up month after month, year over year. I'm not talking about share. I'm talking about the number of people that are watching ESPN. Last year in fiscal 24, our fiscal year ended end of September, we saw the most linear television consumption in prime time since 2006.
Wow. 18 years.
We saw the most total day linear TV consumption since 2016. Just think about that. In a world where 8% fewer households are watching television, and again, I'm not talking about share. I'm talking about number of people,
right?
Number of households watching this programming. It is up, setting records. And it's not just live games. It's also studio programming, the same programming that people thought was dead. If you look at Get Up, First Take, and the Pat McAfee Show, Around the Horn, and PTI, Sports Center, our programming, for the most part, is up and to the right. That's television. Then on top of that, you have all this momentum on the digital side. Look at our .com. If you look at the ESPN app, if you look at what we're doing on social platforms, everything is up and to the right. Power of live sports.
I love it. Jimmy, thank you so much for all that you've given today. Thanks for your support of the V Foundation, your love of all that they do. And as much as anything, I'm honored that you were a corporate competitor with us today.
Well, I'm honored that you had me on, Don. It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation. We'll do it again sometime.
All right. As an ESPN fan, a guy who loves the opportunity to be in the sports media industry, it doesn't get any better, and the conversation doesn't get any bigger than with Jimmy Pitaro. There were 3 great takeaways I got from today's conversation. The first was that whole discussion about advancement within your career, declaring to other people what it is that you want to one day achieve is an important part of the conversation. He actually said, I wouldn't have even been a candidate for the ESPN job if I hadn't told my boss that one day I would love it. But he cautioned that as you're doing so, make sure you follow the rule of 2 there. Work hard, treat people well, and then you will get that opportunity. So don't think it's just about declaring. You still have to work hard, treat people well. The second great takeaway I had was the huddle. What I miss most about sports is the huddle. Because at the end of the huddle, you align. You've made a decision that this is the play we're going to go run. Now, all of us have to be on the same page to go run that play together in order for it to be successful. Discuss, debate, decide, align. His team knows it so well that they even reflect on that in their conversations with him. And then his last piece, when he told us big news that ESPN is going to be driving a little change in the model, and by 2025, they'll have available a direct-to-consumer product where you can get ESPN directly. Sometimes you get to a place where you just have to disrupt yourself. The safe thing to do is to do what you've always done, to actually just carry on within the ecosystem that existed. But sometimes you have to disrupt yourself. I hope as you hear da-da-da, tonight that you will remember today's conversation. And I hope that you will continue to be a corporate competitor with us. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.